Have you ever felt a quiet ache inside, one that words cannot name yet lingers like a soft echo from the past? Perhaps it appears in moments of silence when the world slows down and your heart whispers of something unresolved. It is the child within you, the one who once reached out with open hands and wide eyes, only to find the mirror of love clouded, distorted, or absent. This child still lives in you, waiting, longing to be seen, to be held, to be understood. From the very beginning, your soul was shaped in the gaze of another. A mother's smile, her touch, her silence, all became the language through which you first learned what it meant to exist. Yet where warmth was absent, shadows grew. Where tenderness was fractured, the child stored away the pain, turning it into patterns that echo across your life. These echoes are not signs of weakness. They are invitations, calls from the depths of your being to return to what was forgotten, to bring love where love once lacked. Carl Jung believed that within each of us lives an inner child, a figure, both fragile and powerful. To ignore it is to remain bound by invisible chains repeating the past unconsciously. But to face it, to listen to it, is to unlock a sacred doorway to healing. Now in this moment, let us walk together into that hidden room of the soul. Let us meet the child not as a ghost of pain, but as the guardian of your creativity, your joy, your wholeness. Because the truth is this: healing begins not when you silence the inner child, but when you finally dare to hear its voice. From the very beginning, the infant does not meet the world as an empty slate, but through the tender or sometimes trembling gaze of the mother. In her eyes, the child first discovers a sense of existence, a reflection that says, "You are real. You are worthy of being seen." Before language, before thought, this silent exchange lays the foundation of identity, shaping the inner landscape of the soul. When the mother's gaze is warm and consistent, the child learns to trust the rhythm of life. Her embrace becomes the first cathedral, her voice the first prayer. Safety is written into the body, and the psyche rests in the assurance that it is held. But when the gaze falters, when it is absent, critical, or fragmented, the mirror reflects distortion. The child does not see truth, but a fractured image that whispers of insufficiency. Jung saw in this early bond the origin of archetypal imprints, where mother is not only a personal figure, but a cosmic presence. She represents both nourishment and shadow, life-giver and wound-bearer. To the child, she becomes the entire universe condensed into one human face. Thus, every word, every silence, every touch carries a weight far greater than it seems, echoing through decades in the depths of the psyche. This mirror is not only visual but emotional. The mother's unspoken feelings seep into the child's nervous system, teaching them how to regulate or abandon themselves. A smile transmits worth, a sigh conveys rejection. Even the subtle absence of attunement plants seeds of longing that later bloom as anxiety, perfectionism, or despair. The soul records these impressions as if they were sacred texts etched in invisible ink. Yet within this fragile beginning lies not only the wound, but also the possibility of healing. For if the first mirror was broken, Jung reminds us that the psyche forever seeks a clearer reflection. Through dreams, relationships, and inner work, the child within us searches for a new gaze, one that can finally affirm, "You are seen, you are enough, you are whole." The wounds left by childhood are rarely the visible ones. They live in the spaces between words, in the moments when silence felt heavier than sound. An absent gaze, a harsh tone, or expectations too heavy for small shoulders leave imprints that the child cannot name. These impressions sink into the unconscious, where they become patterns of relating, shadows replayed in adult life without ever being fully understood. Absence teaches its own language. A mother too distant, preoccupied or emotionally unreachable, communicates that closeness is unsafe, that needs are unwelcome. The child grows into an adult who mistrusts intimacy, who fears asking for help, who confuses independence with survival. This pattern repeats itself silently, carried like an invisible inheritance from one generation to the next. Criticism, sharp and relentless, carves deep grooves in the psyche. The child absorbs each word as truth. You are not enough, you must try harder. Love must be earned. With time, these words no longer need to be spoken. They take root within, becoming the merciless inner critic that shadows every achievement, whispering doubt even in moments of triumph. Jung would say this voice is no longer the mother's alone, but the archetypal weight of judgment echoing through the soul. And then come the projections, the unconscious burdens mothers place upon their children. Her child may be forced to carry her unrealized dreams, her disappointments, her unhealed pain. The child becomes mirror, scapegoat, or savior, shaped less by her own essence and more by the mother's unmet needs. This hidden demand twists identity, leaving the adult torn between living authentically and staying loyal to the invisible contract of childhood. Yet Jung teaches us that wounds are not simply curses. They are invitations. The patterns we inherit are not final sentences, but unfinished stories. What was once absence can awaken a longing for presence. What was once criticism can stir a hunger for inner compassion. And what was once projection can guide us back to the question, who am I beyond what was placed upon me? Jung spoke of the psyche not as a linear structure, but as a living cosmos, where forgotten parts of the self continue to breathe. The inner child is one such presence, a figure not merely symbolic, but vital, holding fragments of innocence, creativity, and vulnerability. To ignore this child is to silence the original song of the soul. To acknowledge it is to open the path of individuation, the process of becoming whole. The inner child carries both wounds and treasures. Within it live the memories of laughter before shame, the wonder that saw magic in every stone, and the grief of love withheld. Jung would say that to heal we must not bury this child deeper, but turn toward it with the gaze we once longed for from our mother. Only then can we rescue what was lost, our capacity to feel, to play, to dream without fear. This child often appears in our adult life through emotions we cannot explain. Sudden rage at small slights, disproportionate fear of abandonment, or the need for approval even from strangers. These are not the reactions of our mature self, but the voice of the inner child crying out. Recognizing this difference transforms self-blame into understanding. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" we begin to ask, "What is this child trying to show me?" For Jung, individuation meant integration, bringing every fragment of the psyche into dialogue, not exile. The inner child is central to this work because it holds the roots of our authentic self. To walk toward wholeness, we must kneel before this child within, listen to its fears, and honor its dreams. Without this recognition, adulthood becomes only a mask, while the true self waits in silence beneath. And when the child is welcomed back into the heart, something extraordinary unfolds. The critic softens, the patterns begin to loosen, and life no longer feels like a performance for unseen judges. Instead, a new freedom arises, the freedom to live not as an echo of our wounds, but as a voice of our essence. Healing the inner. Child, Jung reminds us, is not sentimental. It is revolutionary, for it returns us to the forgotten center of our being. Imagine you are at work and a colleague offers mild criticism. Instead of taking it calmly, you feel an overwhelming wave of shame, as if you have failed at something essential. This reaction is not only about the present moment, it is the inner child reliving the sting of a parent's disapproval, especially the mother's, echoing in your psyche. The intensity reveals that the wound belongs to another time, replayed again in adulthood. In relationships, this same child often whispers in silence. When a partner delays responding to a message, panic arises as though abandonment is imminent. The adult self knows patience, but the inner child remembers nights of waiting for affection that never came. Jung taught that the psyche projects old experiences onto new faces. What feels like fear of the present is, in truth, a repetition of the child's unhealed solitude. Even success can awaken the ghost of this voice. After achieving something meaningful, a promotion, a degree, or recognition, you might feel an emptiness rather than joy. The inner critic steps forward. It's not enough. This haunting refrain often originates from the mother's voice, whether through spoken words or silent expectations. Without awareness, the child within learns that love is always conditional, tied to performance, never to being. These disproportionate reactions reveal how the past binds itself to the present. What may look irrational on the surface is deeply rational when viewed through the lens of the psyche. The child seeks resolution, replaying fears and longings until the adult self becomes conscious. Jung insisted that what remains unconscious rules us, but once named and seen, it begins to lose its power. Recognition is the first step toward freedom. By noticing these patterns, you begin to separate your voice from the inherited one. The critic may still speak, but you can pause and whisper inwardly, "This belongs to the child in me, not to who I am now." Each act of recognition builds space between wound and self, between past and present. And in that space, the possibility of healing arises, the chance to give the child within what was once withheld, compassion, patience, and love. Healing begins with turning inward, not as an escape, but as a return. One of the most profound practices is visualization. Close your eyes and imagine yourself as a child, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, sitting in a room that feels familiar. Notice the details, the small hands, the eyes searching for comfort, the vulnerability. As the adult self approached gently, offering warmth and acceptance. This encounter bridges the distance of time, reminding the psyche that the child is not abandoned. Journaling becomes another sacred doorway. When you write, let the child speak. Ask simple questions. What do you need? What are you afraid of? What brings you joy? Write the answers without judgment, as if transcribing a whisper long silenced. Through this act, the child's voice is no longer hidden in the unconscious. It becomes part of your conscious story. Jung taught that what is written gains form and reality, creating space for integration. Symbols, too, are powerful messengers. Choose an object, a stone, a small toy, a drawing, that reminds you of your childhood essence. Keep it near as a reminder that the child is not forgotten. In Jungian thought, symbols are bridges between conscious and unconscious worlds. They carry meaning beyond words, reawakening feelings that logic cannot reach. Holding such a symbol is like holding the hand of your younger self, reminding you that you walk together now. These practices may seem simple, yet their effect is profound. Each moment of attention softens the harshness of the inner critic. Each gesture of care replaces judgment with compassion. The child within learns, slowly, that the adult self is trustworthy, capable of giving what was once denied. Healing does not erase the past, but it rewrites the way the past speaks into the present. In reconnecting with the inner child, you discover that the very place of pain becomes the source of strength. The vulnerability you once feared reveals itself as creativity, sensitivity, and the capacity to love deeply. Jung believed individuation arises when all parts of the psyche are acknowledged and integrated. By embracing the child within, you are not regressing, you are completing yourself, becoming whole, and allowing the soul to shine without the shadow of forgotten wounds. The child within you is not merely a fragment of the past, it is a guardian of your deepest essence. In its laughter lives the freedom you once knew, the unshaped wonder that saw the world as alive with magic. To honor the inner child is to reawaken that vision. What once was silenced can now sing again, not as a memory but as a living force guiding your steps with imagination and courage. When you listen to this child, creativity begins to flow with an almost sacred purity. The ideas that seemed locked away emerge like rivers breaking through stone. Jung believed that the soul expresses itself through symbols, dreams, and play, the very languages of childhood. By embracing the child within, you gain access to a fountain of inspiration that was never truly lost, only waiting for recognition. The wounds that once defined you can be transformed into sources of empathy and wisdom. The child you protect. Today becomes the healer of tomorrow, offering others the same compassion once withheld from you. In this way, healing the inner child is not only personal, but collective. It ripples outward, shaping relationships, families, and communities with tenderness and authenticity. The journey of individuation is incomplete without this child. It holds the missing colors of your soul, the pieces that make you whole. 2. Walk away from it is to remain fragmented, but to embrace it is to step into fullness. The critic softens, the shame dissolves, and what remains is the radiant truth of who you always were beneath the shadows. So as we close, remember, your inner child is not a weakness to outgrow, but a guardian to cherish. It carries the spark of innocence, creativity, and love that your adult self needs to feel alive. Protect it, listen to it, and let it guide you toward the life you were always meant to live. A life not bound by echoes of old wounds, but illuminated by the eternal voice of the soul.